So yesterday, Enes Kanter was the latest guy to come on the show. I don't want to be hype man, but I watched Zion, the game, the look, Duke, the brand, relatable, crying, mom, velocity. I'm like, oh, Lord, that's Bryce Harper at 16. That's just, I don't have to look for it. It's coming to me. It's breaking through my TV. Now, a lot of people are giving me this Julius Randle thing because they were both lefties and they're both muscular.
Yes.
I don't really see it.
Well, they are both left-handed. They're both African-American. One played for the Pelicans last year. One will play for the Pelicans this year. Yeah. And, they're both very talented lottery picks. But, no, there's some Julius Randle in them, but there's also some Draymond Green. There's also some Blake Griffin. And there's a magnetism to him. I love, by the way, can we give a little bit of credit to Julius Randle? This might be tweet of the year, right? Where he's clearly watching your show and says, hey, last time you guarded me, I gave you 45. So it's not exactly a burn to say, oh, he reminds me of Julius Randle. It's like, yeah, I just gave you 45 last time you
And Julius is
me.
a nice, efficient player.
His stats were up. He opted out. I don't think he's as good as his stats. Those were kind of a little bit of empty stats because it was on a bad team.
Right.
The Pelicans added him and got worse.
Yeah.
On the other hand, look, he can score. The other part that I think Enes may not be wrapping his head around because the reason Enes has been on the market so much, as talented he is in offense, he's been a sieve on defense.
Right.
And that's where Zion is a 2019 and beyond superstar. He can guard positions 1 through 5. He's strong enough and has a great base to where even against 7-footers, he should be able to body them up and make them play over his length. And he's athletic enough to contain point guards on switches. Like, he's the perfect small ball center in an era in which everyone's looking for the next version of a Draymond Green. So, yes, I think he's underselling him. I do think that NBA players, like in any industry, our industry, baseball, whatever, when the newest, latest, greatest comes out, they're like, yeah, great, that's against college kids. Show me against grown men. But I do think he'll show them. I think he has the chance to be a breakthrough superstar. And I love what they're building in New Orleans.
Yeah, gosh.
I mean, Lonzo Ball and Drew Holiday in the backcourt are as good defensively as anybody you're going to find. And then you have Brandon Ingram with great length, and you have him. And then I love the Jackson Hayes, who eventually, 3 years down the road, has a chance to be a dynamic big guy. I really like what they're doing in New Orleans, building from defense. And they have Drew Holiday's a great passing, too. He's not a point. And then you have a good passer as your small ball 5 and starting power forward in Zion. They value passing. They value defense, athleticism. I think he's in a great position to succeed.
We were talking about the Peyton Manning picture. And it's funny. I was talking about this. Rivalries are kind of dead. Like Yankees-Red Sox is big. I'm not denying that.
It's not what it used to be.
No, and they just play so many times in baseball.
Well, no, I mean, it used to be the hammer and the nail. One team hadn't won in 86 years. Now they've won a bunch of World Series. It's kind of different.
But I don't. Duke Carolina's obviously something. I watch it when they play every year, 2 or 3 times. But I don't feel like there's a ton of NFL rivalries. I don't feel like there's a ton of NBA rivalries. And I think part of it is players aren't fighting for their slice of pie anymore. 15 years ago, kickers started making $2 million a year in the NFL. Everybody's wealthy.
Yeah, a little bit of this, though, is it's like presidents once they're out of office. Like Bush and Clinton now get along, right? And I mean, Michelle Obama's like best friends with George Bush. Like once you're beyond that and you realize how wealthy you are and how successful you are. Like Peyton's not playing anymore, so there's not the competitiveness. There are still rivalries in sports. Aaron Rodgers hates Russell Wilson. Like those two do not like each other.
Is that a good one?
They do not like each other.
So Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers.
Well, Aaron Rodgers does not like or respect Russell Wilson.
Why not?
I think he thinks he's kind of a fake God guy. I just think he thinks he's a phony. He's not being who he really is. Okay. Whereas Aaron Rodgers, like him or dislike him, he's his authentic self. This is who I am.
Right.
I mean, he's worked for his new coach for like a month, and he's like, this offense really doesn't work for me, right? Like that's who Aaron Rodgers is.
Okay.
And he just doesn't. I just don't think he enjoys phonies, and I think he thinks Russell Wilson's a phony.
But does Russell not like Aaron?
Don't know, because you're never going to get a real straight answer.
Okay,
Russell, right?
So
Russell's going to give you the I respect him. I admire him. He's amazing. He's
So that's a rivalry. That's a beef.
Yeah. I don't think Steph Curry and LeBron James particularly like each other. I just don't. I think there's a lack of respect from LeBron's people because he's always thought like, look, LeBron impacts the game at both ends so much more than Steph, and Steph is able to get away with kind of hiding defensively. And I think Steph Curry's like, all right, dude, we won 3 titles here. We beat you. Why aren't we getting our due? I do think that's a legit rivalry. I mean, Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant, right? That seems to be a legit rivalry. I still think it exists. Max Muncy and Madison Bumgarner, right?
Right.
If you don't like me, if you don't like how I Cadillac around the base pass, go get that ball out of the
so
ocean.
You sense more rivalries.
I do. I think this is. Do I think that some of it is make nice, and we're all rich, and at the end of the day, all understand that this is the 1%ers club? Sure. But we had this. Magic and Isaiah used to kiss each other before they played in the NBA Finals.
Right.
They were best friends, and of course, post career they actually had to split up, and now they're back together as best friends. So I think this is more par for the course for post careers, much like post presidents. They all become friendly again.
Okay, Doug Gottlieb, stick around. A lot of stuff. We'll talk some NBA stuff. Obviously, the free agency Saturday, Sunday. Sunday's the day. Saturday and tomorrow they'll start leaking. That's coming up. Welcome back, Doug Gottlieb. So the whole KD thing, you were asking me during the break, and we were talking about where guys are going. And the one guy that I guessed yesterday, I put jerseys on all the players. The one guy I put a question mark is Kevin Durant, because I think Kevin's really struggling. And I think Kevin is emotionally Lee Jenkins told me this when he used to work at SI, now with the Clippers. He said he didn't want to give it away, but he said he's a wanderer. When you sit down and interview him for a couple days, you follow him for a week. Marcus Thompson said this. You can convince Kevin Durant day to day to change his mind. He's just emotionally a wanderer. I honestly believe he doesn't have his mind made up. I think this is very much a LeBron leaving Cleveland, going to Miami, where I remember talking to people close to LeBron, and in 72 hours out, they didn't know. Like, his boys did not know. I think Kevin Durant right now, he's looking at the James Dolan. He's looking at Kyrie's kind of flaky. I mean, I really
plus it's the Nets, right? Like, do you really go to live in Brooklyn? And Brooklyn is amazing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to anybody who doesn't understand, Brooklyn has undergone this renaissance. It's an amazing place to live. That's an amazing arena. They have incredible culture within that franchise, and they were absolute rubble before this current group took over, right?
Right.
So, like, all of that said, it's still the Nets. Like, they don't move the meter at all in New York, whereas the Knicks do anything, and they do. On the other hand, you're going to be the first one to play for the Knicks, and they're going to be bad for another year, and then you got to work for James Dolan, which I think a lot of these guys, especially guys like Kevin Durant, that are so active on social media, they kind of or overreact to the idea that Dolan is involved. Dolan has nothing to do with day-to-day basketball, but once a year he does something. You're like, oh, yeah, James Dolan, the a-hole that still owns the New York Knicks, right?
By the way, Phil Jackson's a legend, bombed in New York. Larry Brown's second worst year in New York. Pat Riley won everywhere but the Knicks. Isaiah Thomas has succeeded everywhere. Bad Knicks stay.
Yes.
They leave a stain. Mike D'Antoni, by the way, one in Italy, one in Phoenix, one in Houston.
Yes.
A mess in New York.
Yes, Pat Riley. Pat Riley, this guy, and Pat Riley and Jeff Van Gundy. And I know they went to one NBA Finals.
But
yes, and then there's been players, right? Amari Stoudemire and Penny Hardaway and Jason Kidd. Like, you go through them, you're like, they've had dudes. They just haven't been able to figure it out. Look, he's trying to figure out who he is. That's it. That's the thing. And I do think that's relatable. He doesn't necessarily know who he is, right? Grew up without a dad. Dad's kind of back into his life. But he has an agent who's a business manager. There's that weird relationship with Rich Kleinman, who, is a New Yorker, and I'm sure selling him on New York and all the virtues of New York. I do think there's this one interesting part which we may be missing on. There's this kind of old school, widely held belief, and there's some reality to it, which is, hey, you do it in New York, and you're big everywhere.
Right.
Right? Like, Jeremy Lin is not Jeremy Lin if he didn't do it with the New York Knicks.
That's true.
It is true. On the other hand, like, you do realize that there's been a movement in real money is in Northern California.
Yes.
The most expensive city to live in the country is San Francisco. Why?
Right.
Because all that tech money, right? Like, in our industry, we're just waiting. When is Apple or Google going to decide, hey, I'm going to buy that?
No, listen, Jason Whitlock was on this 2 years ago. He said, really, the new power base, it's not New York. The media is largely, look at the algorithms. Look at what our government is concerned about in terms of voting. They're concerned about Silicon Valley and information. It's become the new New York, San Francisco. And He's leaving that.
Yes. And you also, you don't actually need to go to New York to be big in the NBA,
Yeah.
right? Big globally. Like, Russell Westbrook is in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And he's huge. He's massive. I mean, Kawhi Leonard doesn't say a word, right? No one can, other than ha, ha, ha.
And he's
no
huge.
one can quote anything he said, but he's getting big. Why? Because he won. So I just, look, at the end of the day, if you're not happy in Golden State and you're pissed off because you think they misevaluated your calf strain,
right.
probably had a partially torn Achilles tendon and they didn't find it. If you're mad, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
But if the idea is I need relevance, at the end of the day, if you come back in a year and Clay comes back in a year and you go out and win another couple of titles, who cares what they say on social media, what they say on all of our shows? You got 5, 6 rings. You put yourself in elite company. And I think now everybody has realized just how important he is to the team and to the league. It'd be great. The NBA needs him in the East. They need a big name. They need a big story. They need the East to be relevant.
It's good for our show. It's good for our show.
But the idea that he needs it, I would disagree with.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.